Is there reason to be concerned about Adrian Kempe's contract negotiations with the Kings? Is he worth what he's asking for? We'll discuss that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly NHL recap show during the season, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Is it time to worry about the contract negotiations between the LA Kings and Adrian Kempe? Probably not. Maybe not. I hope not. According to a report, Adrian Kempe and the LA Kings are currently not seeing eye to eye on what the star winger should make with his next big contract. And I'm sure you know that the Kings' best forward, probably their best player, will have his contract expire at the end of this upcoming season. And after that's up, he will be an unrestricted free agent and be free to sign with any team he chooses. Dave Pagnotta of the Fourth Period reported the other day that Kempe is looking for $10 million per year and an 8-year max contract. Now, this is not the first time it's been reported Kempe is looking for $10 million a year, certainly a sizable raise from his team-friendly contract, his last deal. Pagnotta also reports the Kings have started with an offer under $9 million. I get it. It's a negotiation. This is the way it usually works. One side makes an offer, the other side makes a counteroffer, and hopefully you end up meeting somewhere in the middle. And maybe that will happen here. But when it's a player as important as Adrian Kempe, it's hard not to worry about a potential rift between the two sides. So far, everything seemingly has been professional and just business as usual, but those things can change quickly, especially for Kempe, who has to feel like he's been underpaid over the last 4 years of his current contract, including for this upcoming season. He's been a good soldier. He hasn't said much about it, gone about his business, doing things the right way. There's no doubt that he deserves a raise with his next contract. I don't think anyone would debate that. Obviously, the question is, how much of a raise does he deserve to get? Now, this is just me, but if I asked for $10 million, which I think is fair, I don't think that's over asking by Adrian Kempe and his camp, and the Kings come back and say, how about $9 million? I'd be okay with that. We're close, right? I'm not saying I would take $9 million, but I would be okay with that opening offer. I would expect something like that. Now, that's my first impression. I don't know what Adrian Kempe feels about that, if in fact those numbers are accurate. But if I was Adrian Kempe and I said, I'm looking for 10, and you come back with less than 9, for me, I don't think that's a positive first step. I'm not saying anyone should panic. I'm just saying if it was me and that was the first number the Kings came back with, I would say that wouldn't be the greatest first step to me. Now, Kempe's agent is a guy named JP Barry. He co-runs CAA along with Pat Brisson, two heavyweights in the business. Brisson is a personal friend of Luc Robitaille, for what that's worth. CAA is one of the top hockey agencies, according to Puckpedia.com. Their client list includes Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, David Pastrnak. They rank second in number of active NHL contracts negotiated. So this is a big group, a powerful group. They know what they're doing. As for JP Barry, good reputation amongst players and management in the NHL, which is encouraging. I'm sure Kempe's representatives will handle this all very professionally. This is not their first rodeo, to say the least. The fear is, though, that Kempe ends up feeling slighted. And this is the biggest contract he is going to sign in his career. He's 28 years old. If he gets an 8-year deal, which is, by the way, you have to negotiate. If you want that 8-year deal, which you get by re-signing with your team, This is the last year to do that. Going forward, the max contract you can negotiate with your team is 7. So if he wants to get that max 8-year deal, the most he can get, he'll be 37 when it expires. So this is the contract for Adrian Kempe. This is a huge deal for him. And it's a big deal for the Kings and Ken Holland. The Kings may be losing a top 6 forward on Anze Kopitar after this season. We talked about that on a recent show. As far as the options within the organization to replace that spot as it stands right now, not great. Same thing kind of goes for Kempe. Now, maybe at some point down the road, Liam Greentree, who's a winger, can turn into that top 6 forward. I think that's possible. You could even say that's expected, but that's clearly several seasons away. For the Kings to have to replace Anze Kopitar and Adrian Kempe next year would be a disaster. Now, for Ken Holland, yes, Hall of Fame GM. He's been through a ton of these negotiations, including for some big-time Hall of Fame type players. He signed Alex Laferriere to a deal, his first one as LA Kings GM, as far as someone off the current roster. But this is the deal that he'll be judged on when it comes to being the LA Kings general manager. Now, you could argue it's not good business to just immediately cave into the demands of whatever the player wants when you're negotiating a contract. That said, how about the message that it would send when you take care of a player who has done everything right? Or maybe even more importantly, how about the message it sends by not taking care of a player who has done all the right things? I think it would be a very positive message to both Kempe and the team, and potentially a player who might want to sign with the Kings in the future, to see the Kings basically do right by a player that has earned it. If they don't, what's that message? Do everything right and you don't get rewarded? Our weekly guest this week, former Kings assistant GM Mike Fuda, correctly pointed out, Adrian Kempe is the exact type of player you must re-sign. Drafted by the Kings in the first round, 29th overall in 2014. Took a few seasons before we finally looked like an NHL player, but he has grown into a elite level NHL player. He's not top of the top, but he's not too far off. That next level down, probably. Now, we hoped that he would turn into a great goal scorer, and he has. 3 of the past 4 years, he scored 35 or more goals. He had a career high 41 in 2022-23. 3 of the last 4 years, he's been 67 points or more. And he's a player who, he could be a career king, right? And who knows? Maybe he has his number 9 jersey hanging in the rafters when it's all said and done at Crypto.com Arena. He enters this season tied for 10th all time in goals scored in Kings history with 194. If he signs a long-term deal and he continues to produce the way he has over the past few years, which he should for a while, he'll be top 5 all-time goals scored for the LA Kings when it's all said and done. So we're talking about potentially one of the greats in franchise history. Now, obviously, the production is there, and it should be for years to come. Again, he's in his prime. He's been a drama-free player. He's, by all accounts, well-liked by his coaches, teammates, and the fan base. Quietly respected around the league. Probably one of the more underrated players in the NHL. As for his abilities, great speed, accurate shot, good hands, great finishing touch, good passer, good hockey sense, rarely makes a mistake. He's turned himself into a very solid defensive player. He's got a bit of an edge. He's got a little swagger. He's physically strong. He's certainly not afraid to go to the dirty areas when necessary. He doesn't want to live there, but he's not afraid to visit there. He's pretty much the complete package. And he's a player that you can play in all situations. Power play, penalty kill. He's more than capable to do both. We've seen him on the power play when the Kings have the 5 forwards play on the point. He's even played a little defense in certain situations. He's reliable. He's been injury-free for the most part in his career. 8 full NHL seasons. He's played 77 games or more, 6 of those times. If I were to list Adrian Kempe's shortcomings, I'm not really sure where I would start with that. You could point out that he's never scored 80 points in a season. I mean, for what it's worth, Andrei Kopitar, who's played 19 seasons, has only done it twice. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Kempe, if he played in a more offensively friendly system, I have no doubt he would have scored 80 points at some point in his career, maybe more than once. So clearly, Adrian Kempe's past performance, his age now, what he's likely to do going forward, checks all the boxes of a player that you want to be a huge part of your organization. In all respects, production, health, personality, coachability, there are no red flags here. So is Adrian Kempe clearly a very important player for the LA Kings? Of course. Does he deserve a raise? Absolutely. Is he worth $10 million per season? We will focus on that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you could use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com. You'll get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, we are talking about LA Kings star Adrian Kempe, who's looking for $10 million a year for the next 8 years when his contract expires for the upcoming season. Let's check out the history in terms of Kempe's contracts so far in his NHL career. He signed an entry-level deal for the 2016-17 season, 3-year deal worth $2.68 million. It paid him $894,000 per season. Pretty standard for a first-round draft pick rookie. Couple seasons, getting his feet wet in the NHL, put up okay numbers, nothing spectacular. Kempe and the Kings then agree on a 3-year deal worth $6 million per season. He makes $2 million a year, so it's a little bit of a raise. Final year of this contract, though, he broke out 35 goals that season. So the Kings then reward him with his current contract. It was a 4-year deal, $22 million, paid him $5.5 million per season. So there has been that progression, both in his game, the way he's played, and in the money that he has received. Now, since signing that last deal, he has scored 41, 28, and 35 goals, 67, 75, and 73 points. He was tied for the Kings' lead in goal scoring this past year, led the team in points this past season. He was ranked 37th in the NHL in points and tied for 18th in the NHL last season in terms of goals scored. Now, when you look at players in the NHL who have scored 35 goals this past season, what kind of money do they make? It's a pretty big mix, and it also is predicated on where they are in their careers. For example, on the low end, you've got Vegas Golden Knights young forward Pavel Dorofeev. He makes $1.8 million per season. Again, young player. I believe he's only on his second contract in the league. Then you've got Jason Robertson of the Dallas Stars. He makes $7.7 million. He had 35 goals last season. Oh, by the way, he's up for a new contract after this coming season, and reports are he's looking at around $12 million per year. So who are the players in the NHL who are making right now $10 million per season or close to it? Well, currently there are 3 players that do make exactly $10 million per season. 2-time Stanley Cup winning captain of the Florida Panthers, Alexander Barkov, 2-time Stanley Cup winning goalie of the Florida Panthers, Sergei Bobrovsky, and the current top-line center for the Vegas Golden Knights, Jack Eichel, who, like Kempe, is also looking for a new contract. His deal expires after this season. Reports are he's looking for $13 to $15 million. So if Kempe were to sign for $10 million per year, as it stands right now, he'd be tied with Barkov, Bobrovsky, and Eichel as the 18th highest paid player in the NHL in terms of average annual value. And you might think, is Adrian Kempe the 18th best player? In the NHL, I would say that's probably a little high. I think he's somewhere in the 20s. It's not outrageous, but I think you could argue it's maybe a little bit of an overpayment in that regard. Other players that are making just below 10 million a year, 9.5 million, some pretty big names: Sebastian Aho, Zach Werenski, Noah Dobson, Adam Fox, Seth Jones, Nikita Kucherov, Charlie McAvoy, Alexander Ovechkin, Braden Point, Mark Stone, Matthew Tkachuk, Andre Vasilevsky. It's an impressive list for sure. And you might say, hold on, Kempe is not as good as some of those guys. Nikita Kucherov won the Ted Lindsay Award as league MVP as voted on by the players. Keep in mind, if Kempe gets what he's asking for, yes, it's 10 million a year now, but for 8 years after this coming season. And the salary cap is going up and is likely going to continue to go up. So if you're one of those who thinks Kempe is not worth 10 million, that's an overpayment, it's not going to be in a couple of years. You have to keep that in mind, that this is 10 million, not just for after this coming season, but the next 8 years. So that contract is not going to look like any kind of an overpayment, if you think it is, which I personally don't, going forward. And those other guys, like I mentioned, Eichel, Robertson, those guys are going to make more, and they're putting up comparable numbers. As things go forward, salaries get bigger. That's the way it works. So with training camp coming up in the next couple of weeks, things should ramp up in terms of the negotiations, you would think now. If nothing is done by the start of training camp, I think likely the first question that Ken Holland's going to be asked is, what's going on with the negotiations? For sure, the first question Adrian Kempe is going to be asked when we show up for training camp is, what's going on with your contract? So there's that to have to deal with. It's not the biggest distraction in the world, but it is a thing when I don't think it really needs to be. We'll certainly get a better picture on where things stand between the two sides by judging what their responses are, possibly. The tone of which Adrian Kempe responds to those questions might tell us a lot. I think it's pretty obvious where I stand on this. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing an Adrian Kempe Team Sweden jersey. I'm a huge Adrian Kempe fan, and I won't deny that I'm, I guess, a little biased in this, but while I am talking with my heart, I'm also talking with my head. He's worth it. This is not a player who's asking for something outrageous, in my opinion. I just don't see that. As I said, you could argue that 10 million a year, as it stands right now, might be a little bit of an overpayment, but not throughout the totality of that contract. It's going to look better and better as the years go along, assuming that Kempe continues to produce the way he has, which I don't think there's any reason to believe he won't. So I don't really understand the negotiations here, the haggling. I get it's part of the business, but like I said, for your best player who you drafted and developed, who's done everything on and off the ice the right way, who's in his prime, whose contract in a few years will be very reasonable, get it done. Make him happy. Set a precedent that if you do all the things Adrian Kempe has done, the LA Kings will reward you because he deserves to be rewarded. This isn't just a fanboy saying, take care of my guy. This is a Kings fan saying he's done everything right. He's not asking for the moon. He's asking for certainly a significant contract, but a fair contract. So what are we doing? Let's get this done. And let's, don't turn this into something when it shouldn't be and it doesn't need to be. All right, coming up, we have some unfortunate news to share with you on the passing of a former LA King. We'll do that next. Here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The NFL season is almost here. As a matter of fact, it's depending on when you're watching or listening to this, it may have kicked off already. And FanDuel is here to make sure you are ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you want to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or just keeping an eye on the fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more excitement to your Sundays or Thursdays or Mondays or whatever. So if you're ready, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Some sad news to pass along. Former LA King Lonnie Loach has died at the age of 57. Did not see a cause of death, but obviously condolences to his friends and family. I thought when I saw the news of this that this was a player who played before my time. Actually, that wasn't the case. Lonnie Loach played for the LA Kings in the 92-93 season. That was the first year I really kind of became an LA Kings fan. And of course, they made it all the way to the Stanley Cup final, unfortunately losing to the Montreal Canadiens. So I got to be honest here. I really don't remember Lonnie Loach. According to his Wikipedia page, he played on a line with Jim Hiller and Robert Lang that season for the LA Kings. I'll be honest, I don't remember Jim Hiller playing for the Kings either. Lonnie Loach played 50 of his 56 career NHL games for the LA Kings during that 92-93 season. He appeared in one playoff game. It was the Stanley Cup Finals Game 4, a 3-2 overtime loss to Montreal. Didn't record a point in that game. His first NHL goal was in a Kings uniform, November 14th, 1992, scored against the Oilers' Ron Tugnut, which is a great hockey name. Lonnie Loach had all 10 of his career NHL goals in the same season with the LA Kings. He was originally drafted by the Blackhawks in the 1986 season, 5th round. Didn't ever play for Chicago. Made his NHL debut with the Ottawa Senators after they selected him in the expansion draft. The same season, the Sens put him on waivers, and then the Kings claimed him. After his time in LA, he had a very brief 3-game stint with the then Mighty Ducks of Anaheim in their inaugural season. Lonnie Loach was born in Ontario. And you might look at his career and dismiss it as just some guy that maybe you've never heard of. But the guy played 25 professional hockey seasons. He had 621 games in the old International Hockey League, the IHL, even played in something called the UHL overseas for a few years, had a handful of games for the Manchester Monarchs in the AHL. Later in life, he did a little bit of coaching, ran a hockey school for kids in his native Ontario. So Lonnie Loach, not that much older than me, passing away at the age of 57, far too young. And, it's easy for us to kind of dismiss guys if they aren't like NHL stars or something. I know I worked in sports talk radio for many years, and one of the last shows I worked on was with a couple of college football greats. LeVar Arrington, who was one of the greatest linebackers at Linebacker University, Penn State, and Brady Quinn, who was a 4-year starting quarterback at Notre Dame. But neither one of those guys were superstars in the NFL. LeVar had a pretty good career, but he didn't live up to the expectations of being a Hall of Fame player. And Brady Quinn, you could call him a bust. He was a first-round pick of the Browns. He had arm issues. He bounced around the league and never really became a legitimate starting quarterback. And there are people who look at those guys and they think, those guys, they just dismiss them because they didn't have great NFL careers, or maybe they even think worse of them. And we're talking about one college football Hall of Famer in LeVar Arrington and another guy who should be in the College Football Hall of Fame, runner-up for the Heisman Trophy his senior year. So, these are accomplished athletes. Not everyone becomes a star in the NHL, but these guys do deserve your respect. They've accomplished a lot, even if they never became NHL stars. And oh, by the way, if you make it in the NHL, even for just one season, respect on your name, because you, for a little while at least, were the elite of the elite. You made the highest league in the NHL. So I was reminded about that when I was kind of looking at the career of Lonnie Loach. So did want to mention that he passed away far too early at the age of 57. And again, condolences to his friends and family and former teammate Jim Hiller, who I'm sure was very sad to hear that news as well. Real quick, closing it out on a little bit more of an upbeat note. As you well know, if you've watched or listened to this show for any frequency, I am a jersey nerd. I love my collecting my hockey jerseys. I did see that LA Kings insider and friend of the show, Zach Dooley, reported the LA Kings will, in fact, have a third jersey or an alternate jersey this season. And I was wondering if we might get some news on this week, because you may or may not know, some of the teams around the league have been unveiling their new third jerseys for this year. Carolina Hurricanes, Seattle Kraken, Ottawa Senators all unveiled their new jerseys. I got to say, I was not a fan of any of those new jerseys for those teams. So I am hoping, fingers crossed, that the LA Kings new alternate jersey looks a lot better than those jerseys, because those ones were, they were okay to not so okay. So we'll see. But I'm excited. I know what I want for Christmas now, probably, unless it looks really bad. But the Kings are going to have a third jersey for this coming season, according to LA Kings insider Zach Dooley. And frankly, he would know. If he's reporting it, then it is going to happen. So looking forward to talking about that and critiquing that once that comes out and we see what it looks like here on Locked On LA Kings. All right, for you everydayers, those of you who listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, you know you have your chance to chime in with your thoughts on our weekly fan feedback show coming up at the end of the week. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say about Adrian Kempe's contract situation. Is it too early to worry? Plus reaction to other shows this week, our interview with former Kings assistant GM Mike Fuda, the Anze Kopitar interview where he revealed this may be his last season. Any thoughts on that or anything else that's on your mind? It's lockedoneddie@gmail.com, the email address to get an email in for the feedback show. If you're watching on YouTube, we always welcome your comments in the comment section. We'd love for you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. And if you're interested in some extra LA Kings content, shoot me an email, lakingsextra@gmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to pass along some information to you. All right, I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.